y'all, it's Hope here at Crafty Hope and welcome. I am working on, or about to work on, day 81 of my 100-day project for 2024, and that is my Not Precious project. Now, like I said, this is day 81, so you may have seen many of the other videos or Instagram post or whatever that I have about this project, but basically I decided for this year to work on taking some of those things from my stash that I have deemed too precious to use and use them, or tear them apart, or take them and just somehow incorporate them into some of my art. So I've gone through a whole litany of things. I've made two, I don't even know, containers of items that I could pull from, and I just finished, you may have seen it if I posted it, a project with some scissors in it that I had thought, these are too precious, what will I ever do with them? But today I was like, no, I want to do something simple. We're having kind of a stressful day today in my house. So I was like, you know what if I tear down some of the tins? Like, these are like tea tins or cookie tins or whatever that I have in my stash. I use them in my jewelry making. And you know, sometimes I have a hard time even taking these apart because they feel too pretty, too precious, whatever. So I do have another video on how I tear those down. I'll link that up here, but I'm going to try something new today. I've seen this in books. Let me put these here aside, because these are the ones that I have deemed so pretty and too precious to use, and I'm going to try to use them today. But first I have to tear them down into usable pieces. So I have seen something in books and whatnot to, normally I take a pair of pliers and pull this bottom apart. I think that's in that video I just directed you to, but I'm going to try using a can opener. Placed on, not here, but on its side, and see if I can take that off. Now, I think I can do that with these two round ones. I'll probably have to go old school for this one because of the angles of this one. So we'll see. I'm going to practice on this one that's a little less precious. Though it is all in another language. This is a product of Italy. I don't know. It's got a little angel on it. It's a pretty little, there's like fairies and all kinds of fun things. So, but I have not deemed it precious. It's got a barcode. It's not that old to me. So I'm gonna, kind of voice over the rest of this maybe. Yeah, that's enough talky. I did try to cut this tin open with a regular kitchen can opener, and I've kept some of it in here, and it started off, you know, I got a good little bit into it, but then started having problems with it. So it was not as effective and easy as I had hoped it would be. And granted, I always tend to have problems with a can opener. You can see I'm trying to go forward, I'm trying to go backward. I was really just not having a good time with this can opener. So perhaps it was my cheap can opener. But yeah, so once I struggled with it for a while, I came back in with these hardware store tin snips. They're huge, and what I'm going to do is cut down the seam here of this tin and then break open the part that I cut to, and then cut around the bottom. So this is the way I used to cut tins, but it always felt like, I don't know, so much waste to me, especially if there are parts at the bottom that you really like. So I will show you in a minute how I do other tins, but this is an option to cut down that and then cut around. Now I should obviously be wearing some gloves and protective equipment to keep myself from getting hurt, but y'all, I have such tiny hands that most gloves just don't fit me. They're floppy at the fingers and they become more of a hazard than anything for me. So wear gloves if you can. So here I'm showing you how I tend to go about taking taking apart tins, and that is, I use this big pair of tin snips. They're not tin snips, they're wire cutters. That's what they are. And peel up that bottom rolled edge. This one seems to be going really quickly and easily. Some of them are much harder than others, but this one I was able to peel up pretty easily. Once I get all the way around, I make sure that it's unrolled thoroughly, because some of them are rolled more than others, and then it just popped off. That one did anyway. That's not always the case with all of them. So once I get that cut off, I will go down again the seam edge of this, just so there's a little bit less waste, cut down that whole seam, and then unfold the tin. And I'm going to do that with all 3 of the tins that I've got there. You can see I'm flattening that out. I do this on like a paper surface or something that's not going to be damaged. So because keep in mind, when you cut down tin, it is very pokey. It is very sharp. It will scratch you in an instant. So from there, I am going to trace some shapes. I have these stencils that I've cut out through different things. I think most of them I've used like a vinyl cutter that I've designed these shapes and cut them out on that. But you could also just draw a shape and use scissors or a craft knife to cut them. So from there, I picked out what areas of the tin I want to cut, and I use a fine tip Sharpie to trace those. So I just, trace those bits. This one, I was being very specific about what shapes I wanted, because it has like these bird or peacock type shapes within this. So I was trying to capture those. And I've cut this video down quite a bit so you don't see some of my futzing with all of them. I showed you that on that floral one, because there's not a whole lot of repeating patterns, I just traced it on the back, which was going to be a lot easier for me to see them. So, then tracing on the front. So if you're particular about what pattern you use, trace it on the front, and if you don't care, trace it on the back. That's a lot easier to see. So I'm using some tin snips. I've got 2 pair. I've got this one, I can't remember what they're called, like Julie Chen or something. They're kitchen shears that I've recently picked up, but you can see on the left, there's a red handled pair of tin snips that I really like using too. So it's all about personal preference. These were still fairly new to me, so I thought I'd try them out. So I am just cutting around the shapes that I have traced. I don't know that I'm going to show you me cutting out all 3 of them. Well, maybe I will. We'll see. But as I cut them, I am being very careful to see any of the pieces that fall, move them from my desk, dispose of them carefully. You'll see my disposal system here in a bit. So I am I'm cutting those along the lines, and I'll do the same thing for this other piece of tin as well. So yeah, and you can see I try to cut down the tin into more manageable areas and try to keep in mind to, again, not waste too much, because these are nice tins. I had felt that they were precious because they have these beautiful designs on them, so I want to preserve as much of them as I can. So like I said, I should be wearing scissors. I should be wearing gloves to protect myself from these very sharp shears. Man. But, yeah. So if you're still a beginner, I definitely recommend doing that. But I've been doing this a long time, and, should know better. All right, so I am getting the last bit of this one here cut down. You see I'm trying to go back over them. I typically will cut out the outside of, especially when I'm trying to get to it, cut around the outside of it and then trim onto the lines I trace, so that I can be more precise when I have a smaller piece to work with. So I've got all these little shards there that I'm going to immediately pick up. I've got a little metal bucket that I keep on my desk, and that's where I dispose of
sometimes I even work right over that. That's where I dispose of these little sharp pieces so they don't get lost in the trash and happen to fall out. Yeah, so here's my last one. You'll get to see this a little bit better, I think, but you'll see that when I cut this, I am trying to preserve as much of that tin as I can. And I'm starting by just kind of doing a general outline cut of mine. And then, yeah, I will cut these down and then work with just these smaller pieces. It's a lot easier to manage that way with the smaller pieces. So once I get these 3 cut here in just a second and trimmed down, I'm going to leave it at that for this day 81, and we'll come back in with what I do next in 82, and I'll have another real-time voiceover before we get to the actual work. So yeah, I just wanted you to be able to see this is how I start. I start tracing and cutting, and I mean that takes a little bit while because I have to decide what I want to trace. So all right, we'll get to that day 82 here in just a second.
I think it's day 82. I'm pretty sure that's right. These are the pieces I cut out from the tin yesterday. And so I'm going to do a little work today to hopefully turn them into some earrings. That's the plan anyway. Just some fun little shapes. And so my process today is going to be, I don't like the super sharp edges here at the points. So I'll trim those off, like even up here. And then I will use some basic sanding tools, sand them down, punch holes with a metal punch, and yeah, add any beads or chain or whatever other elements I think these need. I'm not sure yet. So I'm gonna look at these real quick. These seem to be different shaped. Okay, anyway, that's what I'm gonna do for day 82. Hopefully I will finish these today. If not, we'll do it again tomorrow.
As I mentioned, I am going to first trim off those corners, just the tiniest little snip off each corner. I'm not going to angle them in any way, just get that littlest tip. And as you can see, I'm working over that little bucket. I've got, like I said, I don't want those itty bitty bits of tin loose in my craft room or in my house. I have animals. I am barefoot most of the time. I don't want that metal at my feet. So I'm very careful to make sure that it goes into the bucket. And so each and every one of these is getting, depending on their shapes, getting a snip. Even that teardrop shape that has just the one point at the top, just the tiniest little snip. And if I could keep my bucket upright, that would be pretty awesome. So I do love making these 10 earrings. It's a great way to upcycle old metal things that, especially if I can find ones that are in disrepair, but sometimes some of them become far too precious because they're patterns and designs I've never seen before, or they're patterns and designs I've seen other jewelry designers use that I've never been able to find before. So I have made them far too precious. Okay, once I've got them all trimmed, I am going through, and I'm sorry I'm a little bit off camera there. I'm going through with a little bit of alcohol on a paper towel and cleaning off the marks we made with the Sharpie pen. So a little bit of alcohol will take that right off. If you have alcohol, hand sanitizer might do it, or some other kind of acetate. Now I am going to trim this down, but I have several sets of sanding sponges. These are just from Dollar Tree, and I'm starting with the coarsest, and I just do one side of the coarsest one, and then one side of the finest one. And sand all the edges, all the corners. And see there, I had to trim that down. I'm going to go back in and sand that again. So I do quite a bit of sanding with these sponges. It takes a while. It is because that's the last thing I want to happen, is to have somebody get poked or stabbed or cut with something I've made. So I spend a lot of time with these sanding sponges. And then my favorite thing to use to sand and file these is I think it's what's it called? It's 0000, so it's 4 zeros. What do you call it? Steel wool. So, and y'all, that steel wool is like magic. After you sanded with the other supplies and you come in with that steel wool, the edges feel like butter. It is the smoothest, softest. Oh, I love this step. So, and you don't have to have these specific materials, but I do recommend if you're going to make tin jewelry, definitely check your edges, make sure that they are not jagged or going to hurt anybody in any way. So you can see as I'm sanding it, I'm kind of rubbing my finger over the side just to make sure, oh, I love that feel. So I'm going to go through all of these and then come back in with those metal punch. So this is just like a hole punch for metal. They come in different sizes. This one is, oh, I can't see it. It's either a 1.8 millimeter or a 1.5 millimeter. I think that's my 1.8, but it's hard to tell once it's in my hands. I think it's my 1.81. And I am punching holes anywhere where I want to either add a bead, or actually these first ones are going to have some chain on them along with a bead. The green and gold ones are going to have some beads hanging from it. And then the teardrop floral ones, I'm just going to put a single hole in it and they're going to hang simply. So I'm coming through and being super precise, because if I happen, and I've done it so many times, y'all, if I happen to punch too far to the edge, that hole will not be a hole. It will just be a gaping open that I won't be able to hang anything from. So if I do that, I have to start over. I'll have to go cut another piece of tin and sand that tin and clean that tin and all of those things. And I don't want to do that. So, and you can see once I've punched my hole, I have a little bench block, which is just this super heavy piece of metal, and a little hammer. And I am hammering down the holes I've punched, because they tend to, where that metal has broken through, it has a little bit of a sharper edge on that side. So I make sure to just take my little hammer and pound down that little sharp bit. Oh, and y'all, sorry, my light kept getting in the way. So definitely trying to work in well lit area so I can, like I said, see where I'm punching those holes so I don't make a mistake. It can be really tedious for me. So this one, as you see, I did one at the top from which to hang my ear wire, and then I've got 3 holes along the bottom that I am going to hang some beads from. And this last one is simply enough, like I said, single hole at the top of each of them, and then I will flatten out my little hole, and then we will come back. I think I stepped away and I grabbed, okay, so this is not a necessary thing. It's something I've seen another jewelry artist do, and it's basically to dome these metal pieces. For some reason, when they are domed, they have a bit of sturdiness that they don't tend to have when they're flat, and I don't know why that is. I'm sure it has something to do with like arches being a sturdy shape or something. But I've got a wood doming block along with, this is a little wooden bowl that I picked up in an estate sale. So I'm showing you that, especially for my bigger pieces, I just want to get that little bit of a curve in there. And this little bowl helps me achieve that. So, and I'm doing that with my fingers there for those bigger pieces. Whereas those smaller ones I started with fit just fine in my dapping block. I also have a metal dapping block, but the holes are not the holes, the domes, concave surfaces are not big enough, as big maybe as the ones in the wood one. And the wood, to me, I always like, because I feel like it's not going to scrape and damage the tin pieces the way that a metal one would. I don't know. It's also very heavy. So when I work with smaller pieces, I use my metal one, but this wood one is great. I think I picked it up maybe at at a craft store like Michael's or something like that. So once I've got all of these domed, I step away and I'm going to gather some of the other findings and beads and supplies and basically do some of the design work off camera. And I've come back with those things kind of laid out. So, and I'm working, you can see specifically in this order of starting with the blue one. So I'm going to put my beads I've picked out on a head pin, and I am going to make a wrapped loop. You can see I bent my wire, wrapped it around. I will put a link up here in the upper right, along with down in the description box. I have a tutorial on how to make wrapped loops, and yeah, I've got this, this video is about a lot of other things and not about that. So, but you can kind of see how I am making wrap loops using some round nose pliers, and I am completing these loops because I'm going to hang them from a jump ring at the top of these 10 pieces. You'll see how we do it. So I'm trimming off the excess, and then I will tuck it again. That is a little piece of wire that's poking out, and I don't want anything pokey on something somebody may wear. Now, most of my jewelry ends up at Hello Gallery in downtown Fairhope, but I also have an Etsy shop with other pieces if you want to check those out. In fact, I think this first pair are at the antique store, not the antique store, at the gallery. My gosh, y'all. But I'm not sure about the other ones. They may have sold. I haven't seen them in a while. So for these other ones, they are going to hang from the bottom of my tin. So I'm starting my wrapped loop by forming the loop. Before I close that loop, I'm going to open them up and wrap them directly onto the tin. Now this makes sure that this is a super secure connection, because with the ring, you're going to have that little slit that's in a jump ring, and either the bead or the tin can slip out of that jump ring. So I really, especially when I'm working with him, really enjoy wrapping the beads directly onto the tin, and that's what I'm doing here. I don't always do that, because I'll admit that when you do add jump rings, you get a bit more movement of the beads because they've got the additional space there, but it's not completely necessary. So when I do use jump rings with tin, I try to use oval jump rings. So these are because they are oval, the tin will hang from the bottom of the oblong, and the slits in oval jump rings are in the side and not at that bottom portion, if that makes sense. So those are just all things that I think about when I'm using the tin. So here I'm adding 2 little lengths of chain to the top pieces of this tin with my oval jump rings. I've added to both of them now. I kind of skipped ahead. And then I do have a round jump ring, and I'm adding on one end of the chain. I did say it's a round jump ring. So one end of the chain, then the bead, and then the other end of that chain. I'm trying to make sure it's not twisted or anything like that, so we don't have any problems. And then I will close that jump ring. Now, I also have a tutorial on how to open and close jump rings, but y'all, it's a simple twisting motion. Don't ever pull straight apart a jump ring. It will distort it, and it will never go, and you will definitely have things coming off of it because it weakens and distorts them when you pull them apart. So I'm showing you here again, put on one end of the chain, then a bead, then the other end of the chain, which can be super fiddly, and then twist the jump ring close. I'm going to come back in and at the end and add my ear wires for all of these, but really that's the most simple part of all of this. So for that green and gold set, I have quite a few tiny beads picked out, and I will admit to you that I really love working when I'm working on things like this that have the same thing over and over again. I will do that step all at one time, like put all of the beads on these head pins. So for both of these earrings, I'm going to go ahead and lay out the beads that I'm going to do on my head pins, and then I'm going to come in with my round nose pliers and make the the loops without wrapping them. So I'm going to come up and over and just like that. So I'm going to bend my wire, make my loop, and then put the head pin down, because it's just this thing that I do. I like to try to work with the same tool over, especially if I'm going to do the same motion over and over again. Sometimes I'll mix it up because I get tired of doing the same thing over and over, but something like this, it's like a rhythm. And then I don't have to put my pliers down or anything. I'm just picking that up, bending it, making my wrap. Just like that. So the next thing I'll do is I'm going to come in, and I'm thinking, I'm going to open up that loop, slip on that loop, close it, and then make my wrap. Just like that. I will go ahead and trim it and tuck it real quick, and that's switching between no, I don't even tuck it. I'll come back and tuck them all separately. Because I don't want that little tail hanging off while I'm trying to wrap the other two loops. So I do go ahead and trim that, which is switching between them. But yeah, a lot of times when it's just the same motion over and over again, it's just a lot easier for me to just use that same thing. And I know I'm over explaining some of this for some of you, but this is here so that anybody that sees this kind of understands the process, and this way I get to explain my reasoning behind it, because I'm sure somebody's like, oh my gosh, why is she doing it like that? It's just my reasoning. So then I do tuck the ends of each of those, and I'm going to do the other earring just the same way. And now for the final one, I am coming in with I think I've got a couple of round jump rings for the top, but then I have picked out, or it may all be ovals. And you can see I'm just twisting one open and then putting a second one on. And that second one is going to help these earrings face the correct direction when they're being worn. So that's why I'm adding two and not just one. If the holes in this were positioned differently, like if I had twisted that somehow at the top, I would have positioned it differently. So I went and I grabbed some fish hook ear wires, that 2 silver ones, 2 brass ones, 4 silver ones, 2 brass ones for these. And I'm just opening for some reason I opened the jump ring on that one. I don't know. For the most part, I am just going to twist open the loop on the ear wire and slip my slip my ear wires on. Once I get all of those ear wires on, y'all, these earrings are done. Granted, it took me 2 days to do it, but I was just trying to stretch it out. I mentioned at the beginning there was some stressful stuff going on. I honestly do not remember what that was right now. I can't remember. I'm sure there was something if I mentioned it in this video, but I don't know what it was, honestly. So these earrings are done, and it's simple upcycling. And if you have any questions about my process or about how to work with the 10, definitely let me know. I'd be happy to answer them for you. If you have 10 you want to send to me, let me know. I'd be happy to work with it. So I appreciate you coming by and spending this time with me, and I will see y'all later. Thanks. Bye.